The show is agree to disagree, but my partner, John Cockerham, has another engagement, so I'll be on by my own self, which means that I've been known down life's road to disagree with myself on things. So I agree to disagree with myself probably today. This will be a half-hour segment instead of a 1 hour, which is because of the fact that you can't go. Even I have my limits. I know it's hard to believe. The next show we do is on the 27th of May, and that is the day after Memorial Day. And that will be John's retired, going on vacation now and traveling about the country. And so that the 27th will be his last show. He said he would solve all our problems. So once that show's on, you don't have anything to worry about. They'll all be solved for you because John's going to bring in the solution. I said, can I say anything? So sure, yeah, you can say something. So I will also have my input on it. While I have you for a half hour, I thought I would go over the other show that is done, which is called The Good Old Days, just so we can clarify, first of all, the difference, but also the type of show that it is and the type of show this is. So I'm going to stay to Raynham, which people probably wonder why we don't do that in the first place, but we'll maybe talk about that if the spirit moves. Good Old Days was started in 2011. That's hard to believe it's been on there. And basically for every other week we've had different guests on. Agree to Disagree has been on since 2012, a year or so later. Started with Bill Nickerson, who was a member of the Republican Party structure at a state level. He was a state official. So he was one of the top-ranked Republicans in the Commonwealth of Mass. We lost Bill to a heart condition, and it was obviously a dramatic loss, not to disrespect people who have come and will come on to this show. It's just that you don't replace people like Bill Nickerson. But Dick Chavo came on board. Dick is a selectman in the town of Raynham, member of the Sewer Commission, was a member of the Finance Committee, and Dick was on here for quite a few months. Then John Cockerham, who is going to leave us after the 27th, came on board. John, many people don't know now because it's been so many years, but Marie Smith and I were at a meeting and heard this voice, and it was John's golden voice. And we said, John's back. And he was a member of our Finance Committee for several years. And John was also an auditor for the federal and state, also a bank executive. And so he is a whiz with numbers. And so he joined us, and when John speaks numbers, everyone listens. Of course, sometimes he doesn't speak numbers, and then I don't listen. But I at least let him have his say before I disagree with him. That's what Agree to Disagree is all about. It's basically with people that you can break bread afterwards. People wonder about now politics, whether people can break bread. Well, in the old days they did, and they don't, many of them now, and that's rather sad. But let me talk to you about conservative and liberal, because it has something to do with the town of Raynham. We're going to stay in Raynham here for a little bit. The local people in Raynham are what is called conservative. I say that to you because I'll show you in a minute how the votes come out for other than liberals. Also, we will discuss the fact that there is a difference between being conservative at a local level and being conservative at a national level, and that's how this show evolved. There are people who watch this, who know me, who say, what's McKinnon doing taking the liberal point of view? Because they voted for me for many years, calling me a conservative. Well, conservative local is one thing. Conservative national is another thing. For example, conservative local is a person who watches the tax dollars, gets a bang for the buck, starts off with budget 0 on up, and is rather structured when it comes to negotiating with union personnel. So that is local conservative, and people understand that's where I was. The national conservative is an entirely different scenario. For example, I personally agree with the minimum wage going up. That might be considered liberal, but not local to my knowledge. But see, though, so there are issues that occur locally that I had a Republican friend of mine one time, and I don't give names too much if I can. But I said to him, would you please not join the Democratic Party because you're too liberal for me. So I have my conservative side, but it's at a local level, and I am considered liberal, although I will say, and I think most people will agree with me on this though, that both parties have gone too much to the extreme, to the other side. So the Republicans are too conservative and the Democrats are too liberal. And so therefore they're not getting anything done, because you meet in the middle when there are people who are the middle of the various parties. And there aren't many of those today. I think we have one though, and I'll talk about him in a minute. Locally then, I'm going to say that running locally in the last couple of years, and these people are going to run again down in Raynham, because we had Barney Frank as our representative, and Barney retired. So I'm going to give you two names then, Joe Kennedy and Stephen Lynch. Now, and then I'll also talk about a guy named Scott Brown. He used to live in Massachusetts. He lives at his year-round house now in New Hampshire. Most of the people living around him think it's a summer home, but not now. It's his year-round home. He's moved. He was there all the time. We just didn't know it. That's where he lived, home there at night. Didn't go to Raynham. Went to New Hampshire. Joe Kennedy, in a primary now, this primary vote, Democrat, drew 159, and Stephen Lynch drew 105. Scott Brown, in the same primary, this is for Senate for Scott Brown though, drew 328. So you understand why people in Boston think Raynham's a Republican town. We're not a Republican town. We're not a Democratic town. We're basically, you might say, an independent town. We don't particularly like either party. We don't like government that much. Now, people like me, of course, who have been in government for many years, I've opted to say that I do believe in the two-party system. And believing in the two-party system, you have to make a decision which party you're going to join. Now, many of the people, though, that are independent or unenrolled, we call them, many of those people really are Democrat and Republican. They're just sick of the party, and they don't want to be categorized as a member of that party, so they call themselves unenrolled. But they have opinions of that party. What they don't have is the too far to the left and too far to the right, and that's why we are where we are. There are people out there, if you're watching and thinking about it, hard to believe, but there are people out there who are saying, we know Steve Lynch, and we know the name Kennedy. Live in Massachusetts, you know the name Kennedy, and the name Joe Kennedy. We know the name Joe Kennedy too. That's for another day. But this is young Joe Kennedy, who is the grandnephew of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the grandson of Bobby Kennedy, and his father is Joe Kennedy, who was son of Bobby and also was a representative. Now he represents an oil company, which he does some ads for. He's rather popular. He still is popular. He could do all right if he decided to return. Now, the reason I'm talking about Joe Kennedy, are you ready for this? He's your rep. He represents you in the town of Raynham. Now, I know some of you are going to say, and I'm going to say it, I'm going to say Joe Kennedy is my representative. But The fella who came to Raynham after Barney, and by the way, Barney Frank spent quite a bit of time in the town of Raynham, and he had a full-time office in Taunton, right next to the Bristol County Savings. So Barney was not only well-known, he was considered in the town to be in the town. You would not be shocked to go to the town hall and find Barney Frank there. We all, I say we, meaning in the party, we all knew Barney Frank. I was asked and honored too, in a way, when Barney first came to town, to drive him about and show him the town of Raynham, show him the different groups and things that he wanted to know. He felt that he couldn't represent a town unless he came and got to know the town. Well, Steve Lynch did the very same thing. Steve Lynch has attended our ribbon cuttings. He's attended our Veterans Memorial Service. He even came to town when there was a town meeting due, and in the afternoon there was an election at the middle school, which is where I'm sitting right now, you know that. He even attended the meeting where the young people were running for office and gave them advice on how to run and all that. Stephen Lynch is a conservative. Remember I said I don't. Sometimes I remember what I was going to say. I was going to tell you, Stephen Lynch is a conservative. He goes to Washington, and sometimes he does things that Democrats are very upset about. And you know that makes our day, doesn't it? We like to see those people upset. And Joe Kennedy, I understand, is doing okay. The reason I'm saying that there are many people that don't understand that Joe's their rep, many people don't understand that we now have 2 reps. I don't know anyone who thinks that's a good idea, by the way, and I don't even think the reps think that's a good idea. Somebody drew a line through the town of Raynham. We're small enough as it is, the town of Raynham. We're 13,000 people, and the town itself is small. You know, the largest town is Plymouth, second largest is Middleborough, the largest city, square miles, Taunton. Then what are they cutting us in half? What they cut us in half? And one part of my street, I don't know if the other part, I think I've got Kennedy as a representative. I do believe that. The reason I say a lot of people don't know he's around is, and I've made this known, and so there's no sense in kibitzing about it. I think he went to a nursing home one time and maybe stood out in front of a supermarket. I don't know of him ever being to the town hall. Maybe he made it there without been out of the loop. Maybe he's been by. But as best I know, Joe Kennedy, and I'll talk, you know, we've got a half hour, right? I'll talk a little bit about the difference between doing the job and running for the job. And I will say this for both Steve Lynch and Joe Kennedy. They both know how to run for the job. The problem that we run into as a small town is that we don't come under the Kennedy philosophy of running for office. Now, do I have to tell you the Kennedys have done pretty good? I think they've done pretty good. So they know how to run, but they run city elections. They run to the larger number, and we happen to be a small spoke in that wheel, and so therefore we don't come under their thinking. But Lynch, I will say, he was down here quite often, and people all think, you know, of those who are active in government, all think they know Stephen Lynch. But I don't know anyone, except for those who are active in the city of Taunton, who have met Joe Kennedy. Now, Joe Kennedy does come to the city of Taunton. He visits the city of Taunton with some regularity for one of 2 reasons. One is it's a city, and the other reason is he lifted the Barney Frank's office as to be rented by somebody, because Joe Kennedy did not move into that particular city. He doesn't have an office in that city. So I'm not trying to badmouth, but I'm just trying to clarify the point so you'll understand why many of you don't even know you're represented by him, because he's never been to town. Scott Brown is an interesting one. because he got recognition in the Boston Globe for not coming to town of Raynham too. It isn't, when I said I talk about Raynham, I'm sorry to say it isn't our finest hour sometimes. Small town. We love it. I love it. But sometimes there are things you don't get when you're in a small town. And Scott Brown got statewide attention when he was running for Senate, because when Sergeant Monty was honored 2 or 3 different times, Scott Brown not only didn't make it to town for that, he did send his representative, who was a part-time young man from Bridgewater, very nice. He was on the school committee until this most recent election, very nice young man. But there was a dedication of a room in the Legion, and he was what we would say in a small town down the street and didn't bother coming up the street, because he was in downtown Taunton, and if you know where the Legion is, and most of you do, it's up the street from the city of Taunton, and he couldn't make it up the street. He was invited to these things, by the way. So that's the price you pay for coming from a small town. Now, but I'll give you something here now. Ready for this? There are no ads, so you got a half hour. Here's the election. Scott Brown and Elizabeth Warren. Raynham now, small town. Scott Brown, 4,333 votes. Elizabeth Warren, 2,638. She got stomped in the town of Raynham, and yet won the general election because of what? This on the quiz. Because of the cities. She carried the cities. So that will give you an idea of, when it comes to Senate, though, those people don't think they have to come to Raynham at all. Either party think they have to come to Raynham. By the way, to be fair to the big picture, the fellow that ran against Joe Kennedy, he was on the Good Old Days show. You know, these people, the opponent to Steve Lynch was on the Good Old Days. So Steve Lynch was on the Good Old Days. All these people were on this local show we have here in town, except for the senatorial, and of course Joe Kennedy, who has a head cold. He had a head cold. Now here we go for Stephen Lynch. He ran against a guy named Joe Savagi or something. I apologize to Joe, but he doesn't live in Raynham, so he doesn't know I'm destroying his name. Steve Lynch, 1,803. And Joe, 1,020. So Lynch carried the day. But Joe came to town also, and again was on our show. These guys, they really liked the town of Raynham, didn't they? Well, I will just finish up the town of Raynham by saying, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again, there is a world of difference between running for the job and doing the job. And those who know how to do the job sometimes don't know how to get elected. And sometimes those who know how to get elected, they don't know how to do the job. So you're lucky in a way that as I look at this now, and by the way, no objectivity here, it's subjectivity. Stephen Lynch is doing a great job. Joe Kennedy is doing a great job. And Elizabeth Warren, now I'm going to say something about Elizabeth Warren. Have you got a minute? I'm going to say something about Elizabeth Warren. I met Elizabeth Warren when she first ran. Went down to Taunton, naturally, to meet her. Went down to Taunton, met Elizabeth Warren. I'm no big deal. I'm just another guy in the street. But I was not impressed with Elizabeth Warren. I said, well, looking at Scott Brown, I kind of knew about Scott Brown, and don't get me going on Scott Brown. But so I did vote for Elizabeth Warren, but I said, I don't want to sign, I don't want to make phone, I don't want to, seems like a very nice person, I'm sure good to her mother, but, well, I've been wrong before. Most of you who know me say, oh, we can tell you how many times you were wrong. I don't want to hear it. But I was wrong about Elizabeth Warren. I have never seen a person who is so new in a Senate seat, who really has no governmental, never held a position. So I'm talking about myself too when I first ran, but that was a different story. I have never seen a person like Elizabeth Warren come into the United States of America, not Raynham, not Massachusetts, the whole country, and take it by such a way that they're already talking about her as a presidential candidate. How did this happen? Well, the lady is dynamite. I'm subjective, but I'm just telling you, she's great. I was wrong in my, they say this, first impressions, very important when you're applying for a job. She was applying for a job, she made a terrible first impression in my eyes. But what a job she's doing. One or two of the things, first of all, she's coming around for my veterans, which I'll talk about. And the other thing is, which is something which John and I agree to disagree, but not on this. The United States government, we all have things to be ashamed of, don't we? The United States government should be ashamed of itself in the way it handles veterans. It is beyond excuse. There is no excuse for it. I'll give you one of the reasons, though. When we eliminated the draft, we went to the all-volunteer. We took the number of people in the service and reduced it down by such a number that the people who go to Washington now, they're not veterans. So the veterans lost their lobby when they lost the draft. The other thing, of course, the country lost when it lost the draft was the fact that if the people really decide this isn't a good war, but then they don't have to go. And not only that, not only do they not have to go, you ready? They don't have to pay for it. They don't have to pay for it either. Their taxes don't go up. There's no rationing. And they don't have to go. Years ago, Mr. Kennedy, John Kennedy went before a group of students, college, and talked about a volunteer versus the draft. And he was saying, well, should people go? Well, yeah, they all thought they should go, but wait a minute, all of a sudden there was a pause. And he said, oh, I didn't mean you had to go. And they said, oh, then people should have to go, as long as it's not them that has to go. So that's the problem that we run into. I get, what is the other excuse? Absolutely none. I will get back to that, but I want to just give Elizabeth Warren a pitch on something else. Of all the things that happens to young people is they are taught by elders like myself and many of you out there that you are not going to be successful if you do not have a good education. Education, I know I'm an old school teacher. Here he goes again. Yeah, I know. Education's the answer. Education and health, those are the things, if you have those, you're off the starting block. You're going to run a good race. You may not win, but you're going to run a good race if you got your health and you're educated. And what the United States government does, it's enough to make you wonder. Because most of us wonder anyway, don't we? Don't tell me, McKinnon, to wonder. Yeah. They make money on student loans. The United States government makes monies off the kids who are taking out student loans to be educated. Now, us liberals believe everyone should have a right to an education right through college. I believe that. It ain't going to happen. And in a way, I understand, and I kind of agree with the fact there should be private schools and not be, therefore the government tends to take control. If they give you a nickel, they want a dime. But Elizabeth Warren is fighting to make sure that students can redraft their loans at a lower rate. Never mind trying to stop the government from stealing from the students. The kid puts down his wallet or pocketbook, and the United States government, whoo, they got their hand in that, haven't they? Why? Because Bill Clinton said, I'm sorry, because I like Bill Clinton. They asked Bill Clinton why he did what he did. He said, because I could. And that's what the United States government does to students. Why did they take money from the student loans? Because they can. And why did they increase their interest rate? And if they signed for higher, wouldn't let it go lower? because they could. And Elizabeth Warren is fighting that, and my hat off to Elizabeth Warren. I don't know what the future holds for her. I don't think it's presidential candidate. I think she's about 64, which to me is very young. I'd love to be 64 again. But Elizabeth Warren, 64. Next year she'd be 65, 66. So if she ran next year, she'd be 66. Now she doesn't. So now she's 70. That's a little bit long in the tooth, as our current vice president is going to find out when he tries to run. So that's just the way it is. Well, I'm going to get into a little bit of agree to disagree, which if John will let me get into it, because he's got a whale of a show for the last show. Do not miss the last show. John Cochran has a great show going out. He's going to tell us how to resolve our problems in the world today in the United States government. So, but I will hit one, 3 minutes to go. I will hit one at least and probably two. And the first one is something which John and I will debate if we have time. We have something in common with North Korea and China. Well, that's nothing to brag about. Well, it's capital punishment. And think about the ways we punished them in a capital punish way. We used to electrocute them. They caught on fire. We electrocuted them. They caught on fire. In the old days, we used to hang them. I heard when I was a kid, I don't know if you heard this. If you didn't, I don't want to hear about it. In Canada, I heard when they hanged you. I don't think they do it anymore there. 3 times, if you survived the 3 hangings, they let you. They didn't hang you because they figured it was an act of God 3 times. There are people that get hung 3 times before they get hung. Decapitation, you don't do that 3 times. 1 time. But think about it. Oh, just think about it. But now the most recent one is they give you a mix of things which they're getting from foreign countries, and the foreign countries won't send it to us because they don't believe in capital punishment. So we have to, under subterfuge, get this mix of things. And there was a guy, and I don't remember, it doesn't matter to me what state it was. There was a guy, and he was a terrible human being, terrible man. And they were going to execute him. And the mix didn't work, and he was convulsions. Finally, he ended up with a heart attack. He died of a heart attack. In point of fact, they tortured him to death for half an hour. Now, we're going to run short on time, so I'm just going to tell you, of all the things that I believe, is that I believe, in my world, it's worse punishment for life in a day, as long as you give them life in a day. The problem that people have is that you give them life, and 2 weeks later they're walking in the mall. That's why people argue. Well, John will be back in 2 weeks. You're going to see John's at his best in 2 weeks. He's really prepping. And so I will be there, and I said, John said, you're going to let me say something. So we're going to have a little disagreement on it, but John's got the answers to the solution. And of course, he's done a great job. He's been a great partner. And so what I'd like to do is to say that there's a lot of things yet to come on Agree to Disagree. Thank you all for watching.